We're going to do a deep dive on what to consider when you have multiple offers on your property.
Moving forward with the Decker team. Moving forward together with the Decker team.
We're excited that for over 30 years, we have been able to come alongside you and really help you navigate the whole selling and buying and investing process. And more than that, been able to help you navigate life itself. Kind of exciting. We've been doing it for over 40 years. Together.
Wow.
And we have seen that together we've got this. And so we're excited that together with you, we get to move forward, making some great decisions in real estate. And so there's so much more to consider.
Than price alone.
Because price alone is not what an offer is made of. Although it's an important factor.
It's a big factor, and it's a factor that a lot of people go straight to is what's the price.
Right. Except if we have a price, but now we have some big conditions, and that's some of what you'll learn in this episode. What are those things we want to consider in detail in addition to price?
Yeah, like just the other day, I was working with a client, and we had able to develop over a couple of days. We were able to develop 3 offers on the property.
In the better part of the million price range, which is kind of a nice price point to have more than one to consider.
Yes. And what it came down to was not so much price, because the one that had the best price originally had the poorest conditions. They were too long. They were too vague. They just didn't feel like the people were really serious almost.
Well, there wasn't as much stability, right?
In the terms
or
and
certainty in the terms
offer.
and conditions. There was a lot more wiggle room, as we might call.
And we asked to have those tightened up, and that buyer refused. So then it became, okay, well, let's go on to our other offers, and let's look at what conditions they have, what's the deposit amount. And in this particular case, the property was a little bit unique.
Right. I just want to stop on deposit for a minute, because we said we'd do a deep dive on them.
Yeah.
So the deposit, although it sits in a trust account, and you as the seller cannot get your hands on it until there's either the closing of the property or by mutual consent or by court order. And when I say mutual consent, the parties to the contract, aka sellers and buyers, agree that the money can go where the money's got to go, or the court has deemed it so. So about 99.8% of the time in our over 2,380 families that we've helped, it's been determined by the actual contract.
Yeah, it just closes and the money's
distributed according to the way the contract is written. And so it sits in a trust account. So then I've had many people ask me, why does it matter if it's more money? I don't get it anyway. You're right, you don't. And it's actually difficult to get access to it without agreement, other than the courts, which is difficult.
That's after it's not conditional. During the conditional period, they can get their deposit back.
Not a problem.
No worries.
The reason it actually still matters, though, is if I have, or imagine you have, $40,000 as a deposit, or $30,000, or even $20,000 as a deposit sitting attached to a particular agreement of purchase and sale. Conditions have been removed. You've done your due diligence, or not in this case, unfortunately, in this market. You've made a solid decision. You've done as much due diligence as you've chosen, and now you have an offer on the property.
And let's say you have a hiccup in your finances as a buyer. And it's going to cost me a little extra over the first few years, because I have to do maybe a second mortgage and a first to actually close on it. I can't get just a standard first mortgage like I had planned on.
Right. Or maybe you have to have a higher interest rate, or could be lots of different things that make it not as desirable as you thought it was going to be, because the financing continues to be assessed until closing.
Right. And now the option is, do I go ahead under those less than desirable conditions, or do I try to back out, break my contract, maybe take the chance of being sued for damages, and also know that my deposit's tied up until that's settled one way or the other. And sometimes a seller will let a buyer out after the fact if they relinquish.
Release the deposit to them,
Right.
to the seller.
To the seller. Now, if you as a buyer have $2,000 or $3,000 on deposit or $40,000 on deposit, which one are you going to work harder to get the financing through so you don't lose your deposit?
Or work on any other issue that might have come up.
Yeah.
It may not be financing. It could be anything
Right.
else that shifted in your life.
Yep.
And so the seller is going to feel much more confident in your ability to follow through because they've got more money sitting in a deposit.
Right. So deposit can affect
If you've got
the choosing of an offer and a multiple offer. Whether they're asking for things that weren't necessarily included in the first place.
Right.
You know, if we didn't include the appliances, and one offer is asking for them and another one's not, the one that's not asking for them looks more favorable.
Right. Even if the price on the one where they're not asking is lower. It may be that they're really high-end appliances and the cost of replacing those far exceeds the difference in price.
Right. And now, this is the subjective part,
Yeah.
which is really tricky. Because just the other day, my client said, well, which one do you think is most likely to close, to firm up their conditions? Because in this case, we had conditions
Yep.
of rural property.
Rural property often
well
still
and septic
does, even in
and
this
building
market.
inspection. And so they said, which one is more likely to accept some of the quirks, the differences in our property that makes it what it is? And so that takes the talking with the agent and see whether they recognize any of the deficiencies, make sure they're aware of those, that the buyer was aware before they put their offer
Because
in.
every home has a deficiency.
Yeah,
I
so
haven't met a home that doesn't have something that isn't quite right.
Yeah, because we don't want them to come back and ask for a bunch of money off.
Or walk away.
away.
Or have the seller request the seller do a whole bunch of work because work equals money and time.
Because it's very difficult to recreate that multiple offer situation. And that's why ones that don't have finance clause or don't have a home inspection or don't have both are typically accepted, even if they're less money than the one with conditions.
Right.
Typically.
Because
unless
of the
it's
certainty.
a big chunk of money.
Right. Unless it's a lot of money, then or a very short time frame, or we've been able to negotiate keeping the one offer kind of sitting there in the background, waiting to find out what happens with the first offer. I mean, there are lots of nuances here that we could not possibly address on a show.
Why you want us on your team.
Right. Because then we can address them one-on-one, one at a time.
Yeah. And many times we've gotten clients actually more than they ever thought they would get for a property. And that's made their transition easier than they thought it was going to be.
Right.
For the purchase of the other property, or how much money they came out of to go into a senior's home, or how much money was there to buy their condo from their dream home, or that kind of thing.
From their amazing townhouse. We just had one the other day where they were certain the spread was going to be a lot. And at the end of the day, even though they paid more for the one they were wanting to buy, they actually sold their home for exponentially more than they ever thought possible. So the spread was negligible, and in some cases it works so well.
What I like to say is we're like Disney. We like to underpromise and over-deliver.
And we're grateful to be your partners in moving forward together, because together we've got this.
Moving forward with the Decker team. Moving forward